let's see. So we've got Dylan. Yep, yep, yep. And Liam, is your dad there as well? Is he with you, or is he logged in somewhere else?
He's just right here next to me.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. So, so just FYI, I'm going to go ahead and record this, and I may use it in a video. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's just fine.
Okay, perfect. So then let's start with, now that we're all here, let's start with a recap. Dylan, can you just give us a recap of the problem that we're trying to solve today? All right, so
we've looked at your CLI warning disable, arming disable warning or whatever it is.
Mhm.
The arming disable flag. So we press, I'm going to plug in my battery.
Okay, your props are off, presumably?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, and I have it right next to me.
What we've done so far is we've gone through and made sure that we've enabled the warnings as well as disabling the, I believe it's called the MSP. And with those disabled, we should be able to see exactly what kind of issues that we're getting through CLI. When we type in status, you can see it right there, we get throttle CLI as our disabled flag.
Correct.
To my understanding, it shouldn't have any warnings there at this point, since all of the safety features as it stands right now are completely disabled.
Yeah. So here's what the, and by the way, you've done everything right to this point. Your receiver is working, of course. And then when you go to ARM, then the first thing to verify is that the arming mode is sort of going into the pre-configured range, and it's still not arming, right?
So what we've done is we've done aux5, and then
exactly. And that little yellow indicator, and I'm going to explain some of this stuff for the people who may be watching who maybe haven't gotten this far yet, but go ahead and flip that switch again, Liam. That little yellow indicator goes into the range where the quad should be arming, but the arm mode doesn't turn yellow, and that indicates something's preventing it from arming. And then you went to the CLI, and of course you've got the CLI arming status prevention code, which you're always going to have when you're in the CLI. And then you've got throttle. So here's the deal with throttle. The quadcopter will refuse to arm if the throttle is not all the way down, just as a safety check. So what we got to do is we got to make sure that the flight controller thinks that the throttle is down. And what I want to do is go to the receiver tab.
Yeah, so about the receiver tab, when this is my controller, the R12DS.
Okay.
So whenever I move the throttle up, it goes down, and whenever I move it down, it goes up.
Okay, well, so that are any of the other channels reversed like that?
They all are. I'm pretty sure.
They all are. So let's do. So your throttle is reversed. Let's do roll left, and roll left. The roll channel should go down. Okay, so you got some mapping issues too. You're moving roll. Or is that yaw? You're moving yaw. I can see you're moving left. Yeah, there we go. Roll right. Good. Roll left. Good. Pitch forward. You're pitching forward, moving the right stick up.
Yep.
Okay, so pitch is reversed. You can see the pitch channel is going down when you pitch up, and vice versa. And then yaw, that's going to be your left stick, yaw left. That's good. Left stick, yaw right. So yaw is correct. So your throttle and your pitch channel are inverted on your transmitter. And you could fix that on the transmitter, but it's going to be a real pain in the butt for me because I don't know that transmitter off the top of my head. So we're going to do it in Betaflight. I'm going to show you how to do it in Betaflight rather than try and struggle through figuring out how to do it on the transmitter. Okay?
Okay.
Here's how we're going to do it. The other thing I want to see is what your endpoints are. So move your throttle all the way up, I guess.
All the way up.
So it's at 1071. I'm going to make a note of this here. Just need to grab a scrap of paper somewhere.
Yeah. So are you going to try to tell us how to move the min check up and stuff?
Well, actually, we're going to go the other direction. So let's check what your endpoints are. So it's 1071, and move it all the way the other direction, 1938. And yaw left and right, I think it's going to be the same for all of them. 1938 and 1071. Yeah, so, okay. So right now your endpoints are 1071 and 1938. And again, this is something we can try to fix in the radio. But there's a Betaflight way of doing it that's a little bit simpler, and it'll just kind of get it all done. Now, what you were talking about is the min check parameter, and for those who may not know the CLI as well as you do, that's the stick low threshold that we're seeing right here. Could you point to it with your mouse so that everybody can see it? Stick low threshold, not in the CLI, sorry. Over on the screen to the right, where it says, yeah, right there, yeah. So the stick low threshold is how the flight controller decides if the stick is all the way down. And when you have the throttle arming status prevention flag, it means that the throttle is above the stick low threshold. And there's two ways to fix this. One way to fix this is to raise the stick low threshold, right? Your stick is going to 1071 at the bottom, but what we really should do is we should fix the endpoints. So we want the channels to go from 1000 to 2000, at the 1000 at the bottom to 2000 at the top. And I'm happy to tell you we can fix all of this in one fell swoop using the rxrange command in the CLI. So here's what we've got. We need the throttle and the elevator to get reversed. And we need to fix the endpoints 1071 and 1938. And go back to the receiver tab real quick. Okay. I want to just double check. Your channel order is AERT. I'm just reading that RT. So aileron is going to be channel number 0, elevator is 1, rudder is 2, and throttle is 3. And it's a little confusing to some people that they're actually channels 1, 2, 3, and 4. But when you're working with the rxrange command, you count from 0. So that because programmers are just weird. So let's go to the CLI.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we're going to type rxrange.
Spaces or no spaces?
No space here. Just rxrange, one word, space, 0. And that's channel number 0, which is actually channel number 1, which is the aileron channel for us. And we're going to type the endpoints that you're seeing, which are 1071 and 1938. Space 1938, correct. And hit enter. Okay, now I just want to check that this is working correctly. Let's go back to the receiver tab real quick. And now we should see that the aileron channel, the roll channel, when you move it left and right, it goes 1000 to 2000. That's the yaw channel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I apologize. We didn't type save. Sorry. Go back to the CLI and do that one more time.
Okay, rxrange 0,
1071.
1071 and
space 1938.
1938. Enter save.
Save, yeah. SAVE. Oh, no, sorry. That's very common. Yeah, that actually just saves the text out to a file. It doesn't actually save. You got to actually type save.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Save saves the parameters on the flight. Everybody does that. That's used if you want to like save out your config dump or something to a text file. Okay. Yeah, so we'll go to the receiver tab.
Okay.
And let's check. Well, we're close. 1995, yeah, and all the way to the left, 1000. Oh, it's pretty good. So it looks like it's pretty close. All right, let's go back to the CLI. That is what okay, so our channel numbering is, I hope, going to be like I expected. The next we're going to do is the elevator or the pitch channel, which is we're going to do rxrange 1. And here, we also need to reverse the channel. So instead of doing 1071, 1938, we're going to do 1938, 1071. And that'll actually reverse. Sorry, you got to put a space in there. Put a space in there before 1930. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so that's how you reverse a channel in Betaflight. And a lot of people don't even know you can do this. And let's just keep going and do the rest of the channels.
Okay, so enter.
And then rxrange 2 is going to be the rudder. And that's going to be, it does not need to be reversed. So it's going to be 1071, 1938. And rxrange 3, and that's the throttle, and it does need to be reversed. And that's going to be 1938, 1071. Okay, and let's save that. And let's see, let's check in the receiver tab.
Okay, so which one do you want to do first?
Let's check that old throttle. All the way down, all the way up. 1,000 to 2,000. That's what you want to see in general, 1,000 to 2,000.
Sweet.
Let's check yaw, the left stick, left and right. Are you moving it right and left? And the other thing we can do, if you scroll down just a little bit in your window, do you see where it says preview down in the lower right? So that
Yeah.
little model of a quadcopter there, you can check the yaw, pit, roll, and pitch. If you move the sticks, it will move according to the stick inputs you're giving. So you can just double check that that's all correct.
The roll is good.
Pitch forward. Yep. Pitch back. Good. And yeah, that should do it. Now we can go a little further. Now we will not have the throttle arming prevention, but you'll notice when you lower your throttle all the way down, it goes all the way to 1,000. And you get, yeah. And the stick low threshold is set to 1050. So there's 50 microseconds of sort of deadband at the bottom of the throttle. And the way that manifests is when you start to raise the throttle, you'll move the throttle just a little bit before the quadcopter actually starts to take off and fly. And the reason that deadband is there is because they want to make sure that everybody's transmitter can get underneath that threshold, although in this case, your transmitter didn't. You needed more deadband. But since we fixed it, we can actually take that stick low threshold down. So go ahead and set your stick low threshold to like 1010. Just give yourself just the tiniest bit of little space there at the bottom to make sure that the throttle's all the way down and save that. Yeah. Now that should do it. You got your props off?
Yes.
Let's go to the motors tab.
Okay. Motors.
Let's flip that. I understand the risks. The props are off. Now we should be able to go to the modes tab.
Okay. Modes.
Lower the where did our arming range go? Oh, there it is. That was weird. So let's go ahead and see if, yeah, I don't know what happened there. Why did that
I'm
change?
gonna save it just in
I
case.
forgot
Yeah.
to save. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's flip that switch and boom, the
Yay.
quad's armed. There you go.
Nice.
Now I can't help. I don't hear your motors spinning. Are your motors spinning?
Oh, I haven't. Yes, they are.
I mean, when you armed, did they start spinning, or only when you move the throttle?
Only when I move the throttle.
Okay. Let's go to the configuration tab. I have another. As long as I'm here now, I'm just going to make a mess of myself.
Well,
I would recommend you've got motor stop turned off. Why are the motors not spinning?
they are spinning.
Oh, they are. They're idling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect.
When I turn the throttle up, they spin.
But when you lower the throttle all the way down, do they stop?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't want that. I think that the motors, when the motors, especially because you see here, you've got motor stop disabled.
Yeah.
So the motors should begin spinning the minute you arm. And I feel like that's a safety thing because whenever the quad's armed, I always want the motors to be spinning as just a great big red flag to any people, dogs, anything that this thing is ready to go. But the fact that the motors aren't spinning and motors, so if you enable this motor stop option here, it will cause the motors to not spin until you raise the throttle. I don't like that. But it's actually disabled and the motors aren't spinning. So that tells us maybe that the ESCs need to be calibrated, that the idle speed on the ESCs might be too low. I don't know. Do these ESCs support D-Shot?
I don't know, but I do
How would you
know-
check to see if they do support D-Shot?
Well, you could just try it. You could just try it and see if they spin. What is this, a wizard? What is this?
This is the whole quadcopter or the
Yeah.
ESCs themselves.
Is this a home built or is this a ready to fly that you bought?
This
This
is
is a home built.
Okay, what ESC is it?
It is a favorite BL Heli little B 20AS.
BL Heli S. They might not support D-Shot. Okay, that's no problem. So you could just try it. You could just enable D-Shot and see if the motors will spin. That's certainly something to try. We could go ahead and calibrate this though. and make sure that the idle speed is all correct. So your min command and your max throttle are all completely fine. Let's go to the motors tab.
Motors.
So unplug the battery from the quad.
Okay.
Okay.
The just to give a rundown of exactly what he has, this is what he sent me at earlier. LHI 220 quadcopter.
LHI
F3
220
flight controller. R12DS receiver with radio link 10.2. A Tattoo LiPo battery and 11.1 volt. So that's the rundown.
I could probably show you it right now.
That's okay. That's okay. So let's calibrate these ESCs and make sure that the endpoints are set correctly. And the way we do that is, again, we unplug the battery and we make sure the props are off. Then you're going to click the I understand the risks button. You're going to take the master slider and you're going to raise it all the way to the top. Have you done this before?
No.
Okay. When you plug in the battery, and the ESCs will make a different noise than they usually do. So that means you're calibrating. Now you're going to take the master slider and move it all the way to the bottom in one go. Perfect. Okay, so that means it's been calibrated. Now you should, let's try arming again and see if the motor's idle.
Yep, they do.
Perfect. Perfect. It seems like you're in pretty good shape now.
Yeah. So, yes, that
was way easier than I thought it was going to be.
Same here.
And then
I'm really glad.
There is one thing, because I haven't really done much with this. All I've done is attach the receiver, the PDB, and the flight controller, and then the ESCs and the motors. And I built the bottom frame, but I haven't even used the camera yet.
I got you.
I've seen people, so the main video that I watched to see how to build this, he left out so many key parts, like, how do I get my controller, no, not my controller, but my antenna to communicate with my my camera.
So I think what you're asking is how to hook up the camera. So there's three parts of the video system. There's the camera, there's the video transmitter, and then there's the goggles. Right?
Yeah.
And then what flight controller have you got?
I have an SP Racing F3.
Okay, so the SP Racing F3 does not have an on-screen display built in. If your flight controller has an on-screen display built in, then that would be the fourth part. The flight controller would be the fourth part of the video system. But since you don't have an OSD, the video wire from the camera is going to go to the video input on the video transmitter. What video transmitter is it? Let me look up an image of it, maybe.
It's a mushroom. I heard that it was that.
Oh, that's the antenna, right? The Mad Mushroom?
Yeah.
That's the antenna. What about the video transmitter itself? Any idea?
I can go get it if you want.
Can we look it up on your screen share? Can you find it on like a picture of it on your screen share?
Yeah, I'll just go to Amazon, and
Perfect.
because that's where I got my thing. I went HI 220 quadcopter kit. So this is it right here.
Mm-hmm.
I will make that full screen.
All right, yeah, let's see what we can see here. If we can figure out the video transmitter. That does have a parts list.
Yeah, so
where's the parts
right
list?
here. So it's a 700.
TS5828, 32 channel, a TS5828. So let's see if we can find a picture of a TS5828 VTX, just anywhere.
Okay,
So we can see
so
what the pinout is.
can you tell me that again?
TS5828.
8, 2.
Perfect. So does it have a plug that comes with it?
Yes, it does. In
Okay.
fact, I have it right next to me. And so what I did was I plugged in the positive and the negative. I will show you this on my phone. So I would
Sure.
plug that into my TS58
Yeah.
and all of the other things. And so I have the positive and the negative plugged into the PDB.
Yep. And that VTX is rated for 7 to 28 volts. So that's safe to do. There are VTX out there that might only take 5 volts, and then you would need to, if you ran them up straight off the PDB, you would damage them. But this one's fine. So that's great.
Okay,
What
so
else?
this one, did you say this one can or cannot run off the PDB?
Yeah, it's rated for 7 to 28 volts. So
Okay.
you're running 3S or 4S most likely, which is going to be around 11 to 17 volts. So you're right in the range. That's just fine.
Okay.
Just something to keep in mind. People will buy, they'll accidentally maybe or not notice that they bought a 5-volt VTX, especially if you're getting the ultra small ones for racing builds. They may only be rated for 5 volts, and then you run them off a VBAT and it fries. But this one's fine.
Okay.
So then
Okay.
those are the red and the black wire. Have you got a yellow wire?
Yeah, I've got a yellow, a white, and a black wire.
Okay, so let's look back at the pinout. Let's look at your screen share. Can you pop that back up again?
Okay, so on Betaflight.
Yeah, let's look at your desktop where we had the picture of the VTX. Let's figure out the yellow
VTX?
wire. The yellow wire coming from the camera and the VTX is almost always the video. But then let's just figure out what that white and the black wire is.
Okay.
Let's pull up that picture again.
Of
I think you've stopped screen sharing.
I have.
I'm
I
not
still
sure.
see his screen share.
I see his camera, but not his screen share. What am I doing here? Swap. Oh, there we go. I got it. Thank you. I had to do. Okay, so let's go back to that browser window. Yeah. Okay.
This?
Yep. So we've got, what do we got here? Ground, video, audio. There's just another ground. Okay. So if you look at the pinout label here, you can see it's labeled 7 to 24 volts. Do you see where I'm, put your mouse where if you can see it. Yeah. Right there. 7 to 24 volts, ground. So that's your power. Video, that's the yellow wire. Audio is the white wire.
Right.
And then there's another ground. You know what I bet the other ground is for? Why are there 2 ground pins? I'll bet it's for if you're running audio from a microphone. So if you have a microphone, you would need to run ground and signal to the microphone. And that second ground is probably for that. So you're basically not going to use those because you probably haven't installed a microphone on the quad.
No.
And if you ever did want to do that, you would also need like an earpiece like Mr. Seal uses famously. Then you could hear the motors in the wind, but I don't know. Some people swear by it. Some people, it's anyway. So don't worry about that white wire and that second black wire. In fact, you could probably just cut them off and not use them. But the yellow wire is going to be for video.
So one sec, I'm just getting my camera out. So I brought this whole box of stuff. Okay, so here's my camera and so here's the camera and here's the mushroom thing. So my camera had a plug to it that I am currently looking for, and I think I found it. So it's right here. And so this plug, I would plug it into the back of my camera. So I'll just demonstrate it. So I plug this into the back of my camera.
Yep, correct.
right there, and then so this is a pin, and so there's a yellow and then a positive and a negative.
Yep.
And so what would the positive and the negative be attached to? I guess
So
if you said
the first thing we always have to do in that case is we have to identify the safe voltage range for the camera. So on the back of the camera, does it say something like 7 to 24 volts?
no, it just shows the top and
Let's go. That's a shame. It's usually marked on the device, and that's the best case. So now we got to kind of do a little digging. Let's go back to your Amazon page and let's go back one and let's look back at the product listing and see if we can figure it out.
okay, so quad
Yeah, so let's
right there. And so the camera is a 700 TVL camera.
It's
It doesn't tell
essentially
us.
going to be soldered into the PDB at the end, though, right?
I think that's likely. So unfortunately, this is a generic camera that they haven't really given us any information about. It's 700 TV lines. That's just like saying it's a high def television. It doesn't actually tell us anything. Most of these cameras will be rated for something like 7, maybe like 5 to 18 volts is very common. A lot of cameras nowadays are rated for 5 to 40 volts, but I wouldn't assume that about this camera necessarily. I think you're probably going to be fine to run it off of VBAT. If your PDB has a 5-volt regulator on it, if it has 5-volt pads,
It does.
You could try running it off of 5 volts, and that's the safest thing to do, because it's always going to take 5 volts. Almost everything will take 5 volts. If you try to run it off of 5 volts and like it doesn't power up, or like the picture is really like got weird colors or is gray or something, or it's just acting weird, then try running it off of just VBAT, which is, are you running 3-cell or 4-cell batteries?
I'm running 3-cell.
Okay. So it's almost certain. I mean, I wouldn't stake my life on it, but I'm really sure that this probably takes 3-cell or 4-cell natively. But try running it off of 5 volts first, and if that works fine, then just go with it. But if you try running the camera off 5 volts and it doesn't work, then try running it off of VBAT.
My 5-volt, I only have one 5-volt, and it's taken by my to power my flight controller. So
Yeah.
I soldered that onto so I got a pin, cut it off, stripped it, and then I soldered the stripped ends into the 5-volt and then plugged it into my into the flight controller. And so could I maybe, like, I know how to take pins out of this and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I maybe take the yellow pin out? So
Yep.
that
Exactly.
out, plug that in.
Yeah, so absolutely. You could, and the SP Racing F3 has 8 motor outputs. And since you're only using 4 of those motor outputs, the remaining 4 could easily be just a nice place to plug in a spare 5-volt accessory.
Yeah.
Because those motor outputs have 5 volts in them, even though it's not used for anything. So yeah.
Right.
So pull that yellow wire out, plug the camera into one of the unused motor outputs. That'll give the camera 5 volts. And then you're going to connect the yellow wire from the camera to the yellow wire from the VTX, and that should allow the VTX to get signal from the camera.
So I'm going to pull the yellow wire out right now, just so I can say a professional told me to do this. My dad doesn't like me doing anything with the wires and stuff.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, as you get more into builds, you'll see that direct soldering, I mean, learning to solder is a great investment in this hobby. If you only work with pins and not with the wires, you really limit the equipment you can select. Your builds will be a lot neater, and frankly, some of the plugs are very secure. They're locking plugs; they're very secure, but some of the plugs are just not that secure, and direct soldering is, you'll see a lot of the pros, that's just all they do. So if you don't know, do you know how to solder?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he does. He does it better than I do, Josh. And I heard that.
Oh,
That's
good.
okay.
Good.
he does.
Yeah.
He does a great job. He already pre-tens and everything. He learned how to pre-ten.
Awesome.
He does a
As
good
you
job.
as you get more experienced with your builds and you get into a little bit higher end equipment, it's all just going to come naked with no pins. And most of the time there's an expectation that you'll be soldering almost everything direct.
Okay, so I took my, now it only has the red and black, and then I have my yellow.
Yep.
Should I just cut this and then solder
Yep.
these two together?
Yeah. So just cut that pin off of there, strip them back, twist them together, solder them, and then, put some heat shrink on there to keep it from shorting out. But that's basically what you're going to do.
And really quick, what was the nomenclature you had for where the yellow wire is going to be attached?
The yellow wire from the
Video
camera
output.
is going to go to the yellow wire on the VTX. So video
Okay.
out from the camera goes to video in on the VTX.
Okay, and so I just have this one other question.
Okay.
So I've heard of, gosh, this might not be big enough. I've heard of Oculus Rifts, but not the newer Oculus Rift being used for FPV. Would the new Oculus Rift maybe be able to do FPV?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. Nobody is really doing it. I mean, somebody's doing it, but it's not very common. And one reason might be that, you don't have like an HDMI output from your FPV receiver. It's all analog. So you would need some kind of a converter to convert the analog output of the video receiver to like a digital signal that the Oculus could interpret, and that would add some latency. And I know that like VR headsets are very low latency, but that's when they're run directly from a computer, right? If you had to do this conversion, it might add latency. I'm not saying it wouldn't work, and maybe it would work okay. The other thing is those Oculus headsets are a little bit bigger and more cumbersome than a lot of FPV goggles are. But if you wanted to try to get it working, what I would do is I would get there's a device, it's basically composite AV to HDMI conversion, right? So you'd plug your FPV receiver in.
Quickly search that.
Yeah, let's go to Amazon and look for, let's try AV to HDMI converter. Bingo.
And this converter would be attached to the Oculus and then would transmit the analog signal would be able to receive the analog signal from the copter and then convert it and then send it to the Oculus.
Yeah. Okay. This looks like what you would want. I can't promise you anything, but the output from the ground station or the goggles that you would have, what kind of goggles do you have now?
The question why I asked that is because I have the newer Oculus Rift.
Yeah. So you would need a receiver. So you don't have an FPV receiver now of any kind, or ground station or goggles?
No. Is that the best fix, Josh, is to get that and just get a different set of goggles?
Well, most people, if you try and bodge something together with the Oculus, you might get it working, but that's just not what most people do, and I'm not sure why. So if you're looking for goggles, like if you look for the Eachine EV800D is a great budget kit starter. That's one that a lot of people, I think they actually just released the 900. That's maybe a little even better. And the other one you can look at is the FXT Viper, which is it's a screen. Those are both box style goggles with a screen instead of the individual little tiny screens that like the Fat Sharks. But they come in between around $100 and $150, and is a great I wouldn't go much cheaper than that because you compromise a lot.
Okay.
If you really want to try and get the Oculus working because you're just curious or because you want to give it a try, I totally support that. And you would want this box, but then you're also going to need a ground station receiver. Which if you search, if you want to like bookmark this or something, I'll show you the ground station receiver you can look at.
Okay. So, do you think that we could maybe in the future continue talking about on FB Messenger? Just keep talking about
Sure.
like you could give me some links and I could check them out.
Yeah,
and
for
stuff?
sure. If you want to check out, I mean, I have some suggested items on my website, fpvknowitall.com, which has my shopping list of suggested products for people getting into the hobby. And there's some stuff there. But of course, if you have any questions, you're welcome to message me.
Okay.
Awesome.
So
Well,
I
guys,
think
yeah,
everything works.
awesome.
Well, thank
I'm
you
really
very
happy to
much,
hear that.
Josh.
Thank you, guys.
Josh, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
For sure. You guys have a good rest of your weekend and a happy holidays.
Happy holidays
Yes.
to you.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Happy
Bye,
holidays.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.